You don't need a PhD. You don't need to be a trained statistician or a mathematician to use AI or make AI useful.
In an AI hype or in a hope territory? And why is that good or bad?
Hype is great because hype generates awareness, generates demand, puts AI leaders, data leaders, IT leaders in demand. I know AI is important. Do we have an AI strategy? What does it look like? How can we create it?
Adobe, Autodesk. I mean, these are giant companies with different applications and their leaders within their individual segments. They have implemented AI so fast with incredible tools that really enhances the productivity and the efficiency of the users of these tools.
Customer satisfaction, net promoter score, could be something else. Unless you're able to do all of that, technology is meaningless.
Welcome to our AI Unplugged Without Borders video podcast series, part of the Transatlantic AI Exchange. Today, I'm chatting with Andreas Welsch via Zoom as he is based on the East Coast. Andreas is an international recognized AI leader, advisor, and speaker known for helping the world's leading enterprises turn technology hype into business outcomes. He's the founder and chief AI strategist at Intelligence Briefing and the best-selling author of the AI Leadership Handbook, which is something we are going to discuss today. Over the last 23 years, including in global leadership roles at the German company SAP, he has advised Fortune 500 leaders on realizing business value from AI, accelerating the integration of AI across enterprises' applications, and positioned SAP as the leader for business AI. Also, Andreas is a frequent keynote speaker and expert panelist and has been named a LinkedIn top voice. He is also an active member of the Harvard Business Review Council and a Gartner Peer Community Ambassador. I am your host, Thomas Neubert, born and raised in Germany, a longtime entrepreneur and corporate executive living here in beautiful Silicon Valley for over 34 years now, and the founder of the Transatlantic AI Exchange. So let's get to it. Andreas, hi. Thank you very much for taking the time for another Transatlantic AI Exchange podcast called the AI Unplugged Without Borders. Appreciate your time. And as we are both, German heritage, so to speak, I want to get right into some topics. I just gave a quick overview in the intro, who you are and what you do. And obviously you had a role and you have two roles. One is the founder and chief AI strategist of Intelligence Briefing. But at the same time, obviously you worked formerly with our German giant company called SAP as one of the AI leaders there. And maybe with your own words, tell a little bit to our audience what you have done here. How long have you been in the United States? And give a little bit of a color and background about the main topic that we want to discuss and how it relates to this really valuable book that you wrote. And as we said, the title of this session is How 60 AI Leaders Have Turned Hype into Business Outcomes. So having an individual who had spent so much time in interviewing all these people and worked in this field, I would assume for the audience, it's going to be a crash course of your learnings and summarizing very quickly what you have learned with these 60 AI leaders. And then, obviously you can refer to the book as well. So with that, the floor is yours. Tell the audience who you are, why are you here, what are you passionate about?
Thomas, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to join your show. I've been following it for quite a while and always impressed and amazed by the high caliber of guests you have. So thank you so much. So folks, my name is Andreas Welsch. Like Thomas said, I'm the founder and chief AI strategist at Intelligence Briefing, where I help business leaders understand where and how they can participate in this new economy of AI and how they can make AI useful in their business. I've just published my first book called the AI Leadership Handbook that's available on Amazon, where I've summarized the key learnings from more than 60 conversations with AI leaders and experts on how they have turned hype into business outcomes, I should say. And it's really fascinating seeing, many commonalities between different people, different industries, different leaders. And, at this time when everybody is talking about AI, we need to do something with it. People have had a chance to get their hands on it. But there's still a lot of excitement, but also a lot of confusion around how do we actually make this useful. So that's where the book starts in how I want to help business leaders turn technology hype into business outcome. Now, for the past 23 years and until earlier this summer, I used to work for SAP in many different roles. In the last 8 years, roughly, in and around the topic of AI. So I spent about 3 years working with the largest Fortune 500 companies in the US, advising them on where and how to use AI in their business operations and their processes, how business software and business software with AI embedded can help solve some of those problems that they have and make them more efficient. I built a center of excellence in SAP's largest engineering organization for SAP's S/4HANA ERP products, but what many of those large companies use to operate their business. So the question was, how do we bring more AI into these products that many, many large companies across the world use on a daily basis? What are use cases, scenarios that we should pursue because they add value to the customer, but they also make it valuable to the product itself? And then for the last 2.5 years, I was fortunate to lead the global product marketing organization and build it up for specifically AI, helping customers in the market understand where's the value in AI in applications and edit. So now, like I said, helping business leaders apply the same learnings. And again, excited to be here today.
Thank you. That's a very good summary of your background. Now, let's get right into it, because funny enough, yesterday I was watching TV, and on the news they had a big announcement of obviously the giant local conference called Salesforce by Salesforce, or was it called DreamWorks or something? DreamWorks, right? So the interesting thing was for me that until, literally 2 years ago, the big corporations, they didn't really use that term that much. Now, obviously, everybody is using it. And what struck me yesterday was that the TV moderator said, well, he is announcing, everything is great. And we are announcing, according to Salesforce, that this is the biggest, and I'm quoting, this is the biggest AI conference in the world. Well, I would question that a little bit, but the interesting takeaway for me is that a company like Salesforce, and DreamWorks is a very interesting, very powerful, gigantic, efficient, and well-organized network event in San Francisco, the annual event. But calling it the world's biggest AI conference puts the weight a lot behind AI from one company, which is Salesforce. Now, if I look at SAP, for example, with your experiences, what are the highlights when it comes to the adoption of AI in a global leader like SAP?
Yeah, well, see, I think many, many companies are realizing that AI is not just a nice to have, but it's actually a must have. And again, not just because your management consulting tells you or your systems integrator advises that you do some projects with them, but because if you do it right, that there are tangible benefits to move your business forward, right? So if you see that you have some challenges in your customer service department, right? Maybe your customer satisfaction score, your net promoter score aren't where you want them to be or where they need to be, right? That's a perfect way to start looking at technologies like AI to see how can you improve business metrics like your CSAT, like your NPS with the help of AI. And then really peel it back and say, what would it take for us to increase our net promoter score by 1 or 2 or 3 points? And what are some of the levers we have? Maybe it is that customers keep telling us the wait time is too long. The response times are too long. The answers aren't good enough. They're not specific, right? Maybe our customer service agents just keep kicking the can down the road and don't get back to us with actionable information. Well, you do have a lot of information about your product and about the most common issues and challenges that your customers have and reach out to you. So why not look at something like AI and make that data useful? Some practical solutions like assistants, chatbots, and the likes. They're really powerful ways to make that business data that then you have useful, again, to drive business outcomes. Now, that can take different shapes and forms across your business. Could be in procurement, could be in sales, could be in finance. But there are all these opportunities to become more efficient and more effective. Not just to optimize your bottom line, but also, starting at the question of how can we increase our top line? What are new markets we can enter? How can we grow faster and farther even?
Yeah.
And right, it's a realization. I think that not just the software industry sees, but others see and need to see as well.
So you have been in a very unique position because you are obviously born and raised in Germany. You lived on the East Coast for many, many years for a global company, a German headquartered company, SAP. Have you experienced, or what are the differences that you experience from a cultural perspective? Right, we talk a lot the adoption. We have the hyperscalers. I mean, the Amazons, the whole Silicon Valley is pumped up with OpenAI, ChatGPT, and what have you. But in general, I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I assume with you being in between, you go to the headquarters in Germany, you talk to your colleagues, you come back to the United States, you talk to your colleagues here. Have you felt kind of a difference between the adoption or the hype cycle or the resistance to AI in general? Is it a cultural thing or is it all equal? Everybody sees and touches it in the same way?
I think that's, we're in a very fortunate position, being able to travel between two different cultures. Right? For me, when I'm in the US, it's looking at what is happening in Germany. When I'm in Germany and I talk to colleagues and friends and family, it's looking at what is happening in the US. And I think somewhere in between, you form your own opinion. Now, being in the US and being currently in the US, looking at what I see is the discourse around AI in Europe and in Germany specifically, I think, as Germans by our culture, we are very risk averse, very hesitant. I see a lot of discussion about, well, what is happening with data? What is happening with my data? Or are they mining my data? Or are they going to advertise and market to me because they know that I bought a hammer and a toolbox? I believe all very valid concerns. And I think companies have a responsibility to handle data safely and securely and use it for the right purposes. So everything around responsible AI and ethics and what should you use the data for, by all means. But I also see that a lot of times, especially in Europe, we're getting so caught up in the regulations and the what ifs and over-regulating to a certain point that it stifles innovation, right? Over here in the US, I feel that there's a lot less regulation. I think we also need to clarify that there is regulation. California, I think, is putting out some good and some interesting things, but even on a national or federal level, it's not like it's a free for all. But over here in the US, I feel people are a lot more open to embracing these new technologies. For example, I'm an adjunct professor at a local university, and I was just there yesterday, and we talked about creating a course about generative AI for students, how they can use it, how they can use different tools. And guess what? The university already has access to, for example, Microsoft's Copilot as part of the Office suite. So they are already embracing it. And the conversations that I had with fellow professors already revolved around, well, I've been using Copilot for a while to draft, syllabus, to draft emails, to draft certain things, or to help me summarize meeting minutes. I feel it's a lot more open. People are embracing it a lot more. One other data point, maybe real quick, I was fortunate to give a training on using these tools for a large biopharma company here in the Northeast just last week. And there the idea was the same. How can we get our people more excited about these technologies, but even also show them how they can use it? Because the tools are there. We are allowed to use them. We have them at our disposal, but how do we do it right? So what I talked about earlier, right? Seeing how others are doing it in the industry was super interesting because they, like I did with my teams at SAP, they also formed a community of practice, and they invited early adopters and multipliers and champions into that community. And they said, for 2 groups of 30 globally, we will provide you that training to help you learn about the tools, the do's, the don'ts, how do you prompt these tools and get good output and relevant output. So you can multiply this within your teams and in your organizations. And even after that, after I shared that on LinkedIn, that we had gone through the training, other people in Europe, for example, commented it and said, hey, that's interesting. I was following the same approach in my company. I think it was somebody from who formerly worked for Siemens who shared that same idea around communities of practice. So that's what I really like about it, right? Seeing also the commonalities, again, coming back to the US and Germany, but also something that I share quite a bit in my book, How to Do That Successfully.
Interesting. So let's maybe tap into the book and the content, because you have this rich knowledge now that you gained by interviewing, 60 AI leaders, which is the content which is the base of the book. But at the same time, you are super active and you have a huge following on social media. So maybe start with a question: are we in an AI hype or in a hope territory? And why is that good or bad?
I love it. Yeah, I love that question. That's awesome, right? So I think if you look at just the last 2.5 years roughly, in that space, there has been a lot of hype, right? Vendors have been talking about AI left and right. You mentioned Salesforce with the Dreamforce event. Others like SAP have been doing similar things as well. And many small companies as well, right? All of a sudden, every company became an AI company, and we've been doing AI for a long time. Not everybody has the track record to really back that up, but be that as it may. So this latest wave of AI and generative AI has made it super easy and simple and tangible for anybody to get up close and hands-on with the technology. Right? You can install ChatGPT or Anthropic's Claude Assistant on your phone. You can use it wherever you have an internet connection. You don't need a PhD. You don't need to be a trained statistician or a mathematician to use AI or make AI useful. What you need to do is figure out what is the best instruction, the best prompt that I need to give to that assistant so it generates something of value and something useful for me. Now, hype is great because hype generates awareness, generates demand, puts AI leaders, data leaders, IT leaders in demand. Right? If you're senior executives, if your board members are approaching and say, well, I know AI is important. Do we have an AI strategy? What does it look like? How can we create it? So excellent to move the company forward, to move the discussion forward. But I think then also as people are experimenting more and more with AI and they're getting up close to see what works, what doesn't work, the typical hype cycle or progression after excitement is, well, realization it's not that simple. We still need data. We still need to figure out what we should even invest in, maybe what vendor to go with, what scenarios we should pursue. And for me, that kind of tips them more into hope, right? That this turns out to be something valuable. This hopefully turns out to be useful. But the good thing is right then and there, and I think we're in this hope territory a little more right now than in hype, right then and there, that's where the conversations start happening. What can we do to move the business forward? Well, again, coming back to the earlier example, maybe in customer service, how can we improve our customer satisfaction scores, our net promoter scores, and break that down into some actionable pieces? And then look at, maybe what software are we using? Are vendors already embedding AI there? Can we get access to it at no additional cost or at just an incremental cost? What do we think the return will be? So the conversations become a lot more actionable and a lot more tangible, and not just the fluffy art of the possible discussions that we see during the hype. Again, hype is needed to create awareness and create excitement, but hope to me is when really the rubber meets the road and when we see real solutions being built and being implemented.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. So if you look at the big companies and in almost like no time, and I'm SAP is one of them, but definitely, I mean, Microsoft is a given, and Google and OpenAI, but even companies like Adobe, Autodesk, I mean, these are giant companies with different applications and their leaders within their individual segments. They have implemented AI so fast with incredible tools that really enhances the productivity and the efficiency of the users of these tools. AutoCAD and in Adobe, whatever the suite is that they have. Why is the leadership important, and why do every company, not just the big ones, but also the mid-sized companies. Why do they need to enforce AI? And what does it mean for a leader to actually lead a corporation of any size into the new era of AI? What do they need to do? What advice do you give them after talking and interviewing, 60 other AI leaders out there?
So, see, the awareness around AI is super critical to start and foster the dialogue and the conversation. What I see a lot of times that leaders and business leaders who are new to AI and new to these new emerging technologies do is jump immediately into a technology discussion. Like, let's figure out how we can use this technology. It's kind of this shiny object. Everybody's doing something with generative AI. This partner is doing something. This customer is doing something. And I read about it in the news. We're not doing anything, right? So there's this whole FOMO, fear of missing out, drives a lot of the conversations, even internally. So if you're in a role, in a leadership role where AI is part of your scope and your remit, you're in a really tough spot because you need to manage these expectations with your senior leaders who are getting pressure themselves, whether that's from the external market or others who are above them. And you need to manage expectations that, yes, hey, here's a technology that we can make useful in our business, but we need to make sure that we do that purposefully, right? And it's not just about technology, right? You can have the best technology and roll it out to your people and to your employees, and it gets zero adoption. Why is that? Well, people who are supposed to use it don't even know how to use it, how it works. Can I trust that thing? Right? For the last 10 or 12 years, I've always run this business process a certain way. I've always matched incoming payments to open invoices by hand, and I know my customers, and I know when I see this exception, why they are paying late. Now this AI thing tells me it knows it better. How? I don't trust it. If I don't know how this thing works, I'm not using it. No way, right? So how do you build that trust? How do you build also these multipliers, these advocates in different parts of your business, especially if you're a large organization? That's really, really key. So to the example that I was sharing earlier with the biopharma company and how we used to run that at SAP, these communities of practice, of multipliers are getting really important, because if you're in this AI leadership role, there's no way you're going to solve this by yourself from your ivory tower. So you need to make them aware of what is AI, how does it work, what are some of the challenges, some of the opportunities, what tools are available, how do you use them, and how would you use them in your role, for example, so that you, as a, for example, operational purchaser, can look for opportunities in the scope of your work. How can I use this? Doesn't have to be just for productivity. I think those are the simple and the easier things, writing your document and summarizing your documents, things like that. But even then being able to think beyond this, because people who are in these specialized roles and subject matter experts see it on a daily basis, day in, day out, what is working well and where are we spending a lot of time with exceptions and follow-ups and things that are not working well. And, helping them understand where AI can help in that part of the business also means that they can bring it back to you, to your technology team, to your AI team, and say, well, I think I have an idea here. I think we should try this out. If only we can, forecast better when customers are going to pay us, or why they are going to pay us late, or what some of those signals are. And usually if I see this, it knows that the customer pays me 3 days later. So really this network of multipliers was one of the key things, that community. But I think also leaders in business have a new responsibility with AI. On one hand, using it for purposes that are compliant with rules and regulations, whether it's your GDPR in Europe or your new EU AI Act or regulation on this side of the pond. But also now that the part about sustainability moves under responsibility. These large language models, generative AI models, consume a lot more energy, on one hand, when they're being created, on the other hand, as they're being used. So, there's this debate of, well, generative AI costs and consumes a lot more energy um, than previous generations of AI. So that's a bad thing. Now, the other side of the equation is what carbon emissions are we able to take out of that equation if we're able to send the truck to the right location because there is AI in our system, or how many fewer stacks of paper do we need to print because there's digital technology that helps us solve that on the back end. So these things for me also fit into this equation of AI leadership and responsibility that leaders take. So again, not just technology, that's a core component, but there's so many other things around it as well, like culture, community, data privacy, security, and many others.
You made a good point with your example about not using AI for the sake of using AI because everybody else does it. I think it sums it down to it has to make an impact on your business one way or the other. Top line, bottom line, doesn't matter, but it has to make an impact. So if I am a mid-sized CEO, owner of a company, or I don't even have to own the company, but in general, I am probably overwhelmed with the amount of AI news and information that are coming on my social media or in the news on a literally daily basis for the last 1.5 to 2 years, since ChatGPT pretty much. Any advice or any recommendations that you heard from the 60 executives that you interviewed or from your own experience where an inexperienced AI leader should actually seek information? It could be on the product side or on the social side, on the compliance side. I mean, there's so many aspects. What do you advise these people where to start? Because I would assume most of these people, they're standing literally in the middle of the woods and they don't see the trees.
I think that's a very good analogy. It is very noisy out there, whether you're on social media or you look at the news, right? There's hardly a week that goes by without any big announcement. Some vendor creating a new model, creating a new solution, coming out with some technology that is novel, that's more advanced than last week's version of it. So it's very, very hard to, like I said, see the tree before the forest. One of the recommendations that others have shared with me and that I've been applying myself is assess, is this something that is timely, is relevant, and is useful for me right now? If it's not, it's probably not that important that I know that OpenAI has come out with the latest model, or that I don't know, Anthropic Claude's model is by a factor of 2 or something better than the last version. But those are details. Those are important details when you work on these details.
Yeah.
But I think as a business leader, the question is really, in my industry, in chemicals, in manufacturing, in automotive, what are the things that I can do today? What is available to me? What are some common things, maybe some quick wins that I can achieve with the help of AI, and drown out the rest? And it's nice and fine and fair, right? We also see that discussion about where is AI going, this whole topic of singularity. Will AI soon be as smart as we are as humans, or even smarter? Or on the other hand, what does more and more AI bring? Those are important conversations and important philosophical conversations. But I think for somebody who leads a business, again, there might be noise at the moment, or are most likely noise. But the question of how do we move our business forward? How do we gain a competitive edge? How do we reduce our cost? How do we make more money? How do we find the best audiences for our product? Those are tangible questions you can ask today. And I'm sure your industry association and others are offering information on those topics as well. So starting there could be another good recommendation.
Okay, good. So everybody's talking about these AI agents. What's that really all about? And how should leaders prepare around these topics? The chatbots, the AI agents, things like that. And that's just the beginning. I mean, AI will be, I think, so much different in 2 to 3 to 5 years from now that we will laugh. What we today, think is the best thing than sliced bread. I think we haven't seen the real thing yet.
I think you make a really good point there. Every time we think that we see something new and novel, and it starts to flatten a little bit, like things like ChatGPT or what these tools can do, there's the next news, the next development coming up. And AI agents, I see it as one example of that. So look, think back how we are working with software, how we have been working with software even before ChatGPT, right? we used to enter some information, for example, in your finance application or in your procurement system, select the best products for the lowest price from these suppliers that we already have contracts with and negotiated rates with, and order them. Now, enter things like AI and machine learning. Well, we got a notification that our supplier is not able to provide the product and deliver them in the time that we previously expected or agreed upon, but maybe here are two other suppliers that you can source from. Same product, same quality, maybe a little more expensive, or maybe it takes a couple of days longer. Which one would you like to choose from? Again, you make the decision, and that's the important part. Now, introduce things like large language models, generative AI, this latest generation, and you might have seen that little disclaimer below your below your text prompt in ChatGPT, right, or other tools. This might occasionally create some information that does not align with our values or create factual inaccuracy. So you, as a user, please check it. Right? Another big paradigm shift. I mean, come on. 3 years ago, we would not have seen vendors say, "Well, if you use our software, use it at your own risk." This might occasionally spit out something that is incorrect, but you need to take care of this and watch it. So I think that's another big shift. Now, whenever we've been using software, we've been instructing that program to do something that we want. Right? A lot of times, if you look at software code, that is, if this happens, then do this, else do something else. Now, with AI agents, the paradigm shifts yet again to users defining a goal and the software trying to figure out how to achieve the goal, right? So taking a larger goal, for example, of creating a marketing brief for a campaign, divide it into subtasks, figuring out who's our audience, what are their pain points, what products do we have, what are the value propositions, what should some creative copy text look like, what could be some artwork that goes with it. These kind of things, you can delegate that to these AI agents that are specialized in each of these individual tasks. And going forward, even those individual agents, think of them like a virtual team. They can have a meeting, they can discuss, and they come back to you with the rationale for, what are the best options, or why should you choose this over the other.
Yeah.
So it's really a new way of interacting with software and a new paradigm shift. And again, we're just scratching the surface. They're the first indications, they're the first capabilities that vendors are embedding in their product. But again, yet also with that wave of technology and innovation, leaders will be called upon to figure out and determine, how do we introduce that in a business? And yes, technology is there, but again, unless you find examples and scenarios where you can use them, where it moves the business forward, where it impacts a measurable key performance indicator, customer satisfaction, net promoter score, could be something else. Unless you're able to do all of that, technology is meaningless, right? It's a way to do something, but if you don't know what the way and what the goal is, it's pretty tough.
Yeah, actually, on that note, I have an anecdote from last weekend. My son was in town, and he just graduated from college looking for a job. So we set up an interview with an art and design studio in San Francisco. So we had a really good conversation, and the owner of the studio actually said, Maximilian, do not go into the design for UI and UX. And my son was extremely surprised to hear that. And the answer was, because you will end up to design buttons, because everything else behind it will be done in the future by AI. So look into a different direction. That was an interesting wake-up call. Just to mention like one little tiny example, what is coming.
Indeed, right? So I think we'll see many more of those examples in UX, or just even application design, like you mentioned, right? AI can generate code. There are some applications that can also generate the UX for you. If you say, "Hey, I draw this on a piece of paper," I think OpenAI was demoing that a while ago. Turn this sketch into a wireframe, turn it into a real application, write the code behind it to do XYZ.
Yeah.
Many more professions, creative as well, everything around generating images and audio and video and music and language and voice and text. I think we'll see on one hand an immense potential, but certainly we also need to understand how we as humans, as professionals, work with these tools and what our role is in guiding them, which most likely will be guiding these tools to generate something that is meaningful, that we can create more quickly, that is more tailored.
So maybe in closing, I think a question I have is, explain exactly whose audience should buy your book and what are they getting out of it potentially? And what was your biggest number one takeaway having interviewed all these executives that actually surprised you that you didn't see coming?
So, look, in the AI Leadership Handbook, I described the 9 aspects that AI leaders need to get right if they want to succeed with AI initiatives in their business. And really, the underlying premise is you need a lot more than technology, and you need to get a lot more right than just technology to do that. One of the key findings for me was that if you are in this role, if you're an IT leader, if you're a data leader, if you're an AI leader, or even if you want to move into these roles and you're struggling and you're wondering, well, how do I do this? You can be certain that there are others in the industry who have either gone before you or are experiencing the same challenge that you're experiencing right now. So the book is your practical guide to guide you on that journey from, well, how do I make all of this work? How do we make all of this work? To really setting up a structured process, finding those high value opportunities for AI in your business, and most of all, bring your people, bring your teams along so they embrace it, so they know how to use that well. And so you as a leader can also reduce some of those barriers and alleviate some of those fears and concerns that, hey, AI is going to take my job. It's coming to your job, not necessarily for your job, as we would say in English.
Yeah,
So really managing that. And again, if you're in a data, IT, AI leadership role or looking to move into a role like that, this book will be perfect for you to learn about all the things you need to do to be successful.
excellent. Andreas, thank you very much. We will make a note on our website about the book. I will actually make a footnote in our newsletter so people should know where to find it. I appreciate, as always, your time. Very valuable, and thanks for writing this book. I assume there will be another one down the road with all the interactions that you have with industry leaders. So again, thank you very much, and this was a very interesting conversation. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Thomas, for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Anytime. Bye bye.